Hello everybody and welcome to the second video in the Python regular expressions tutorial series on the Future Programmer YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going to talk about pattern matching in Python's RE module. Without further ado, let's begin. We know from the last lesson that the most fundamental and yet useful operations that regex allows us to do all have to do with pattern matching. Now in today's lesson, we will explore the matching operations supported by Python's RE module. So let's start off by importing the RE module. Since this module comes with Python in its standard installation, we can simply import it. We don't have to install anything. So we can just write the line import RE in our Python file. To perform a regular expression pattern matching operation using Python's RE module, we need three things. Number one, the pattern. Number two, the string that we're matching the pattern against. And lastly, the type of matching operation that we want to do. And there are several of these, which we'll talk about in a second. Let's talk about these one at a time. So firstly, the pattern. To use a pattern in regular expressions, we first need to compile it, which we can do using the re.compile function. This function is going to return a pattern object that we can use later on. Here, I define a variable called pattern, which is equal to re.compile. And I'm going to pass in the parameter Python right here. Now note that in this lesson, we're focusing on familiarizing with matching methods. So rather than focusing on using actual patterns like we would in actual programs, we're simply going to use the string Python. Now in later lessons, we'll learn a lot more about matching against real patterns, such as letters, numbers, white spaces, and combinations of these things. So we're going to define pattern to be re.compile Python. We'll print out the pattern, and we'll print out its type. And we can see the pattern is going to just be represented as re.compile Python, and its class is re.pattern. This is a pattern object. Now we can match our pattern against any string, so we'll deal with that last in our actual code. Let's talk about the different types of pattern matching operations that we want to do. This is number 3 in our list right here. So we're going to talk about the type of matching operations that we can do. So on the left of this table, we have the methods in the Python RE module. The second column are the description of these methods and what they do. And on the right, we have the return values, the return types of the methods on the left. So let's talk about these one at a time. The match method is going to match the pattern against the beginning of the text. It will either return none if there are no match, or one match object otherwise. The full match method is going to match against the entire text, looking for the pattern. It will also return none or one match object. The search method is going to search the entire text for presence of the pattern, and it will only return one object if a match is found. Otherwise, it will return none. And if these are confusing right now, we'll talk about these with specific examples in just a second. I just want to talk about what each of these do before we get started looking at code. We have the find all and find iter methods. These methods will find all the matches in the text that match the pattern, but they return different things. The find all method will return a list of strings, whereas the find iter method returns an iterator of match object. And we'll talk about the differences between these two in just a second. And then we have the sub method, which will substitute matches in the text that matches the pattern. And this will just return a new string. The split method, lastly, will split the text by pattern match and return a list of split substrings. To run a matching operation, we can simply call the corresponding method, these ones right here, on the pattern object with the text as argument. So here, I have defined a variable to be match is equal to pattern, which is the pattern that we defined all the way up here. We say pattern.match. This is the method that we're using, this one right here. And we're matching against this string right here. Python is amazing, Python is awesome. We're printing out match. Now in this case, we'll have the result of an re.match object. And you can see its type is of class re.match. Now what this line is telling us is that we have one match object which has a span from 0 to 6. These are indices. So we can say the first 6 letters of our string match the pattern that we're matching. Because we have the string Python as the pattern, Python obviously matches the substring Python. And we can see the match has a value of Python. Note that the match method is only going to match against the beginning of our text. So even though we have Python later on in the string, the only one that could be returned is the first one, which needs to be at the start of the string. So even if I have a space here, that wouldn't work. We have to have the first couple of characters match the pattern that we specify. So in this case, we have Python and Python, but pattern.match is going to return none because there is no Python at the start, at the beginning of the string. Now let's talk about the full match method. Now the full match method, as the name suggests, is going to match against the entirety of the text. Since the string Python matches the pattern Python exactly, we'll have a match object returned, span from 0 to 6 once again, match is equal to Python. Now here we have pattern.fullMatch with the same string with one difference. We have one space at the end, and we can see none is returned because this string does not match our pattern exactly. The exact string has to match, the entirety of the string has to match our pattern with the full match. Otherwise, none will be returned. And then we have the search method. Now this method is going to return one match object, but it could be anywhere in the string. It doesn't have to be the entirety of the string. It doesn't have to be at the start of the string. It could be in the middle. It could be in the end. Of course, it could be at the start. So here we have pattern.search, and then we pass in this string. And our match object returned is going to have span 7 to 13, which is this Python right here. The match is Python. Now, only one match object is returned, even though there are two Pythons here. That is because the search method will only return the first match in our entire text. And here we get none because the Python, the P here, are both lowercase, whereas our pattern have an uppercase P. And that is because regular expressions in Python are case sensitive by default, so a lowercase p is not the same thing as an uppercase p. Now we have the findAll method. The findAll method is going to look in the entire text and return a list of the matches that match against the pattern. So unlike the search method, which returns only one object, the findAll method is going to return multiple. It could return multiple if you have multiple. So here we have a string with two instances of the word Python, and it will return a list of two strings, Python and Python. Now the data type of matches is going to be a list, and the data type of each of these items inside matches, so this and this, these are both strings. But in some instances, just knowing what the actual substrings that match the pattern is not necessary. We need to know, for instance, where the actual matches are. We want to know where this word Python is, So in that case, we can use the method findItter. So we pass in the same string, just to a different method, and then we print out matches and its type. And we can see we get a callable iterator object. So the findItter method will return an iterator object. And its type is, well, callable iterator. So with an iterator, what we can do is we can run a for loop for each match. In matches, we can print out match, and we can see these two lines are printed out. This is the first match of Python right here with span from 7, that's the index right here, to 13, this index right here. And then 15 to 21 will be this Python right here. We can see this is 15, and this space right here will be 21. Second to last, we have the sub method. This is going to substitute matches of the pattern in this string with this new substring right here. So it will replace all of the matches in this text that match the pattern that we specify here with a new string. It's kind of like a replace method. So here we're replacing all of the Pythons here, which is the pattern, with a new string C++. And we can see C++ is a language called C++. Doesn't make too much sense, but then the original string doesn't make too much sense either. But we can see the point is Python and Python are both replaced with the word C++ in both cases. And here we don't have any Pythons, so calling this method won't do anything. We still get R as a language. Lastly, we have the split method. Now the split method is going to split our text at the locations where the pattern is matched. So here we have a Python, we have another Python, and we have another Python. You can kind of think about using some sort of a knife, cutting this string apart at those locations. So we get A, B, C, and D. And we can see if I run this code, indeed, we get a list of strings A, B, C, and D. Now in the second line, it's the same code with one difference, which is max split is equal to 2. So we can actually specify how many cuts we want to make on the string with our knife. So even though we have the same pattern and the same text, we're only going to split this text in the first two places. So we have 3 cuts here, we have 3 cuts in the original code, but in the second line here, we're only cutting here and here. This Python is kept intact because of the max split argument. And of course, if we don't have Python, well, the entire string will just be returned as a string in the list. As an alternative to performing these matching operations from the re.pattern object, we can also do all of the things that we did just now using module level functions of the RE module. So here we have a string. This is not a regular expression. This is a string called S, and it has the value of Python. So for all of these lines of code, we call re.match or re.split, whereas up here we have pattern.split. The difference between these two is the one difference of the regular expression. So we're passing in S, which is our pattern string, as the first argument of all of these methods or all of these functions of the RE module. So we pass S in as the first argument. And then the rest of the arguments are the same thing, and we can see the behavior are the exact same. And it's entirely up to you whether you use methods of the pattern objects or functions of the RE module, since the behavior of these two methods are similar with no significant advantage to either. Now, of course, you could argue that in a for loop, if you define a pattern object outside of a loop and then continuously use it over and over again, that's probably a good idea, but you could use either with no significant advantage to either of them. To wrap up today's lesson, that's it for basic pattern matching in Python using regular expressions. Now, once again, of course, actual programs typically contain patterns that are more complicated than the string Python that we saw in today's examples. And in the upcoming lessons, we will learn all about more ways to use regular expressions to fit our actual program's needs. If you have any questions or concerns about today's lesson or this entire series, feel free to comment down below and I will do my best to answer your questions. If you found today's video to be helpful, please consider subscribing down below and giving this video a thumbs up. With that said, thank you very much for watching today's video. I hope you have fun programming and see you in the next video.